Hello and welcome. This is Erica Glessing, and this is a beautiful day. Today, my friend Janet Anderson reached out, and she had tuned into the vibrations of the Love is Summit. And something just told her to contact me, and we just kind of started chatting about what she could contribute to this body of work and raising the vibration of love on the planet. So I'm really delighted she could join me. Janet is an international best-selling author. She's a counselor, speaker. She's a mom of three, right? Three?
Yes, three
Three
boys.
boys who are all now in school. Yay! And I actually met Janet. We kind of got matched up. It was like a blind date with my second cousin, Mary, kind of put us on her front porch and said, "You two need to meet." Remember that moment?
Yeah.
Funny.
It was just like, okay, I'm going to trust Mary. I trust Mary. And there's a reason why we're coming together, for sure.
And we were both just kind of staring at each other. And within about 5 minutes, we couldn't stop talking, remember?
Yeah.
It was like we've known each other forever. So maybe just share with us when you're reaching into that sort of God love and that sense of all that is. I know that you do this, you pray on basically you bring this into your life, almost seamlessly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think about when I was called to contact you of hey, give Erica a message and say, hey, can I, what do you need for the Love is Summit? And it really had me thinking about my own journey and my own stories and where I'm at right now. And it is very seamless when you do your work that you need to do and you clear out the old baggage, the negative patterns, the bad energy, all of that trauma. When you do that work, then you get access to these higher emotions, love, joy, abundance, gratitude. And so through my journey of doing my own work and clearing not only the spiritual baggage, but the neurological baggage, the emotional baggage, the mental noise, all of that really has allowed me to embody those emotions on a whole different level.
Wow.
And I thought I was doing pretty well. And then after you do the work and you're like, oh my gosh, that's what love feels like. That's what it feels like. And then when you get to that point and you're operating and living in those emotions, those higher level emotions more consistently, life is a whole different ballgame. The world is a whole different experience. You hear and experience and you relate and you communicate and you connect with people and the environment, nature on a whole different level.
So for people, one of the topics that showed up for me to ask you about was really it was kind of that whole journey from lack to love. And I just wanted to reach out to people who are maybe sensing isolation, or they're not feeling connected to others, or they feel like they're so different. Mm-hmm. What can you offer as sort of solace or as a shift for people who are, I just got this sense that we wanted to reach out to people who are feeling alone. I'm not sure why, but that's kind of what showed up for me today.
Well, that makes me think of going into neurology. So I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker. I own a mental health clinic, so I do a lot of therapy with people. And right now I do a lot of trauma therapy. So when we enter this world, when we're at conception, this core self, our soul, our core self is there, and it's not broken. It's full of love. It's full of abundance. It's full of joy. But when our crown hits the oxygen in our birth, we are instantly a mix of light and darkness. We have negative things. We have positive things. We're light. We're dark. No human is immune to human pain and suffering. So then that's when this dance begins. And it begins where we start, human pain and suffering gets in, and then it starts clogging out our resources. And that's our first abandonment from self. our first abandonment from love. And so when we really do the work and we get to the core, it comes back to that dance of our light and our darkness. And if we're not seeing ourselves as a whole, then we're abandoning ourselves. And when we're abandoning ourselves, we're operating in fear, we're operating in isolation, our ego defenses kick in, and those all fog out love, joy, abundance, gratitude.
Wow.
So that's what I think initially when you asked me that question. So if from the beginning, we all have this work that we need to do to accept all of us, you know, the whole part of us, the good, the bad, the ugly, the broken. And when you do that work, I call it walking through the facade of fear. If our core self is light, and we enter here and we're a mix of light and darkness, but if our core self is light, and that comes from our higher power, source, whatever you want to call it, God, that where there is light, darkness has no hold. So if we are in the light, but there's darkness all around us, and we have to go through that darkness, when we get through the other side, when we get through the feelings of isolation, brokenness, shame, and we look it in the mirror and we really feel it and move through it, when we get to the other side, we realize it was just a facade anyway. But that you have to go through, you have to walk through that. I often refer to that or use the metaphor. If you are a little kid and you're scared of the basement is scary. It's dark. It's got cobwebs. You're like, I am not going down there. This happens to my children. They say, can I get a piece of paper? I said, go to the basement. It's by the printer. And they're like, I'm not going into the basement, Mom. And it's like, well, why? There's nothing scary down there. As an adult, you know there's nothing scary. But as a kid, you know that there's scary things down there and you freeze. So we all have these younger versions of ourselves that are stuck in trauma, stuck in negative patterns that are neurological, maybe psychological, emotional, spiritual, on all of those energetically, on all of those different levels. We have these younger versions of ourselves that are stuck at the bottom of the stairs, having to go into the basement, but they can't move. So when you do this work, this older version of yourself, the wiser one that's connected to your higher power, like with my son, I have to say, let me take your hand and I'm going to walk you through the basement so that you can get to where you need to go. So we have to do this within ourselves that way. And if we're afraid to do that, then we're in isolation. And then we're disconnected and we're frozen in fear and in the first half of our life. The second half is about letting go of the ego, letting go of the defense mechanisms, letting go of all of the baggage that's holding us back. And once we do that work, and the ego can't go with us there because it doesn't understand the second half of life. It doesn't understand love. It doesn't understand abundance. It doesn't understand gratitude. It doesn't compute. When we let that loyal soldier of our ego go and we thank them, thank you for protecting me because there was a time and a purpose for you. But when we let them go and we appreciate them, then we get to the second half of our life where love is. That is love is.
Awesome. You know, it's so funny, like the different conversations that I've had with people on these topics, because people seem to get their back up when you say the word love. And I think even like if you're willing, you know, how seldom it's actually hashtagged compared to like happiness is hashtagged like crazy. And so I started hashtagging love is. And it's amazing how few things get posted. People are afraid to go there. And I think a lot of times love was used against us so that we were told, because I love you, I'm going to be mean to you from parents, or because I love you, you have to have sex with me from an ex or something before you're an ex. Because I love you, you have to do my bidding. And so part of what I did in creating this whole place to have the conversation about the universality of love and how we can all be love is just to maybe have us let go of a little bit of that sort of what got tied into it. You know what I mean? Like what got tangled up into it and got said was love when actually it wasn't. It was a lot of different things. So what else can you recommend for people who are kind of, maybe they've been in a bad marriage, or they've been in a bad relationship with a parent where they thought out of filial piety they were supposed to love, and then they couldn't feel it? And then what do you recommend for people who kind of had some things like that?
Well, the first thing that I want to explain is the feeling of shame, which is the feeling of being broken. Not like, oh, I feel bad about this, I need to seek retribution for this, but like innately, like there's something wrong with me. Like I'm not, like I was born broken. That feeling of shame can hijack other feelings. So what happens a lot, and we generationally pass this down on our DNA line, is shame will hijack love. So we can actually be feeling the love feeling in our body, and emotionally love is like sunshine in your chest. It's so strong, and it just like radiates out. It only expands. It doesn't shrink. It doesn't take from one to give to the other. It just goes, and it's so strong when you really let it in. It usually moves you to tears. And then right afterwards, when you really let it embody your body, anxiety kicks in and says like, oh no, what if something happens? And that's a sign like, oh, I really let it in. I let myself feel that. So what can happen when shame hijacks it is you start feeling that love feeling, and all of a sudden shame goes boom, and it makes you want to shrink. It makes you scared. It says like, you're not worth it. You're unworthy. Stay stuck to be safe. And so people will get stuck in that. So I want to give you that education, because if you're reflecting on, do I and have I ever really felt the feeling of love in my body, the emotion, the energy of love? Have I ever felt that? And if you have, a lot of people walk around not feeling that. They have not truly felt what it feels like to have love flow freely. Usually there's hoops or strings attached to it, and that gets carried down either on your DNA or emotionally or behaviorally within your relationships. So reflecting on, one, do I really know how love feels in my body? And do I have a shame response that's kicking in that says, you're not worthy of that? What are you, ridiculous? You don't get to feel that way. Like if you have that mental noise or that reaction, then you need to do some work. You need to do emotional work, spiritual work, neurological work, brain balancing work, education, listening to more talks like these. And then you'll start moving through it. I have found the brain-based trauma therapy, like QNRT, quantum neural reset therapy, that I'm a practitioner of and that I do myself, is like phenomenal. On helping the brain, the neurological parts of the brain rewire and it balance from those bad events that have hijacked it or made love not flow.
Well, thank you so much. This has been just so interesting. I can't seem to ever get tired of this topic. And I think, I know when my first book came out, and then it was called Prospect When You Are Happy. And my second book, I was like, okay. And everybody asked me about prospecting. I was like, well, okay, why did I stand for that? It came in guided. And then my next book was about happiness. And you know what? That was good for like 6 years of conversation. Like I was joyful. I had 6 years where I talked about happiness, and I wasn't tired of it. I was always interested in it. And then some point in this last year, I shifted out of that. And now it's like I have this like incessant curiosity now about love. And so I'm so grateful you could come, because it was really an interesting conversation with you about it. And why don't you tell our audience how they can find you and reach out to you and learn more?
Well, the easiest way to find me is on Facebook, Janet Anderson, or on Instagram, Janet Anderson, LICSW. You will find me. You can also find me, Janet Anderson Counseling is my outpatient mental health clinic. That's janetandersoncounseling.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.